Hello everyone, you are about to hear a brief summary of the film The Inquisitor, The Pit and the Pendulum. Enjoy watching. Spain, 1492. The Grand Inquisitor Torquemada ordered the nobleman's crypt to be opened and accused the man of heresy. Even after his death, the skeleton was whipped in front of the family, after which the bones were tossed into a huge mortar and ground to dust. Torquemada poured the resulting powder into large hourglasses. Maria works in a bakery with her husband Antonio, whom she loves passionately. As soon as the girl heard the sound of bells, she immediately knelt down and began to pray for the souls of those tortured by the Inquisition. They will have to go to the square and sell their bread before the next execution of a heretic. The boys stole several loaves, and Antonio chased after the thieves. The remaining bread fell to the ground, and the lovers were caught up by the crowd that carried them to the place of the forthcoming execution. The girl hoped to leave before all that horror began, but she didn't make it. They took the wife of the late Don Alfonso, whom Torquemada declared a heretic, to the execution. The guard did not allow the couple to leave. If they are not heretics, then they must witness the holy works of the Inquisition. Lady Alba begs the executioner to be merciful and kill her as quickly as possible. The woman gave up the ring and asked not to be burned alive. The executioner accepted the bribe and began to slowly strangle the heretic before the crowd and her son. After Lady Alba lost consciousness, she was finally tied to the stake and burned. Maria stood up for the woman's son, who was being whipped. During the commotion, Antonio was hit on the head and Captain Carlos fell from his horse. He wanted to cut the young woman down with a sword, but Torquemada stopped him. The girl on her knees begs the Inquisitor to spare their lives and let them go. Something happened with Torquemada. He got scared and ordered Maria to be arrested for witchcraft. The girl was convinced that her husband had passed away, but Antonio regained consciousness at sunset. From a homeless person, he learned that his wife was called a witch, so he requested a meeting with Torquemada. Antonio has known the girl for a year, and he is sure that Maria did not sell her soul to the devil. Maria is like an angel. Satan was once an angel. Torquemada ordered the baker to go home and trust the church. The court will decide if Maria is guilty or no. And she simply enchanted this man. The girl was led through the torture chamber to the Grand Inquisitor. Moans and screams do not cease for a second. Torquemada ordered all the clothes torn off this witch. The man's eyes immediately lit up, and Torquemada broke into a sweat and ordered the examination to begin. Mockingly, the naked girl was examined from all sides and groped to find the devil's marks. Captain Carlos pinched Maria hard and stated that the bruise was the mark, appearing right before their eyes. Worried and embarrassed, Torquemada ordered Maria to step forward and tore the cross from her neck. Maria was dressed in a shirt and thrown back into the cell. Only this time, to another one, where a grey-haired old woman was already sitting. The woman took some spiderweb from the wall and applied it to Maria's forehead to stop the bleeding. The girl realized that she was facing a real witch and crossed herself, but the woman is just a healer. She helps people, and they want to burn her at the stake for it. The executioner Mendoza was once crucified, but Torquemada pardoned the criminal. As a reminder of the past, there are holes through his palms. The Inquisitor removed the corset with spikes that constantly pierce into his body. Now Mendoza must save the Inquisitor and beat him with a whip. Right there, Torquemada smashed a jug and kneeled on the sharp shards. Mendoza reluctantly complied. Torquemada wanted to rid himself of sinful thoughts caused by the naked witch through pain. No, Gomez took the bodies of the tortured heretics out of the castle and threw them down to the ground. Antonio spoke to the man. In exchange for a fee, he asked to be taken to the castle, to the dungeon where the women are held. The trickster took all of Antonio's money and ordered him to cling to the bottom of the cart. Thus, the guy ended up in the torture chamber. Torquemada's assistants were playing cards enthusiastically, even though gambling is considered a sin. Soon, they might all lose their jobs, because the Pope plans to send a cardinal to stop the torture. Antonio began to quietly run from one cell to another. All the prisoners begged him to help them. Finally, Antonio found his wife, but by then the treacherous Gomez had already told the guards everything, and they pointed their muskets at the young man. Torquemada ordered them to stop and throw the lovers into the fire. into different cells. The old woman is ready to confess to everything she is asked about. However, a confession without torture is not considered sincere, so they started pouring water into her mouth through a funnel. "I am a witch," Esmeralda said immediately, but she could not come up with specific tricks she had done, so the torture continued. It is important to ensure that the heretic does not drown. Mendoza almost killed the sinner ahead of time again. The executioner got worked up and chained the girl to the rack, although in the first stage she was only supposed to watch the suffering of others. Mendoza began the stretching torture. Maria does not confess to being a witch. Instead, the girl heard a voice asking her to follow it. Suddenly, she found herself in a beautiful place next to Esmeralda. The healer told the girl that she had a special gift, and now she is far from pain. The main thing is, don't look down, the woman advised. But Maria did not listen and came to her senses again. "Release her," growled Torquemada. "This won't do." Torquemada lifted the girl in his arms and carried her off, declaring that he would get her confession himself, and let the assistants deal with her husband. Husband! Maria came to her senses in Torquemada's chambers. There was a sword hanging over the bed. If the Inquisitor sins, it will fall and strike him down. He is ready to save Maria if the girl admits that she is a witch. The Inquisitor led her through a secret passage to a window so she could see how her husband would soon suffer. A fire was lit under the torture chair, but the guy just laughs, pretending that it doesn't hurt at all. The clever one managed to deceive his tormentors. Antonio threw boiling water in Gomez's face. He is trying to figure out where Maria is, who just called out to him. The girl ran towards him, but Torquemada stopped her. Finally, Antonio found the right door and put a sword to the Inquisitor's throat. He took Torquemada hostage to be released from the castle with his wife. The fugitives were surrounded by guards from all sides. Torquemada promised to spare them if Antonio let him go, but when the young man hesitated, the Inquisitor used a secret mechanism and hid behind a lowered gate. Torquemada deceived the couple and declared that here, life is death. Retuon, won't pause, Mashua, Arasua. The cardinal arrived at the castle. He is surprised at how Torquemada can subject people to such suffering, but what can be done if they have forgotten about their souls? They must pay for this with pain and suffering. The cardinal drinks wine confiscated from the heretics with pleasure. The church takes not only their lives but all their property. The cardinal announced that Rome has banned the death penalty and demanded the cessation of the witch hunt. He brought with him the appropriate decree, but Torquemada simply burned the document. The cardinal himself was shoved into a niche between the walls and sealed with bricks. The man pleads not to be buried alive. He won't tell the Pope anything, but Torquemada was adamant. Tortures must not cease. They help to cleanse souls. In the name of the love of the Lord, said the Inquisitor, and Mendoza placed the last stone. During the next interrogation, Maria confessed that she was a witch and asked to release her husband. But now Antonio must also face trial. Suddenly, Torquemada fell to his knees and confessed to the sinner that he loves her, but he does not know how to make love. That's why Maria should help him with this now. Maria agreed to become a harlot. Torquemada immediately gave her an expensive cloak. Antonio will be released, but Maria must belong to him only. Lie down, otherwise he will die. Torquemada began to breathe heavily and started undressing Maria, then also climbed onto the bed. Maria whispers and prays to God for help. She hopes the sword will fall and pierce the villain. Suddenly the Inquisitor recoiled and beat the girl. He did not like that Maria did not give in to him without tears, so her fate will be decided by the court. Suddenly the sword did fall, but Torquemada managed to step back and save Maria. The madman slammed the girl's head against the wall and picked up scissors, not forgetting to ask the Lord for forgiveness. Torquemada cut out Maria's tongue. The bloody girl was thrown back into the dungeon. Esmeralda sent Maria back to that beautiful place again and made her believe that she had died. The doctor checked the breathing and confirmed that the sinner was indeed not breathing. The woman demanded that they get rid of the body quickly before it stings up the place. Antonio cannot believe his eyes. His wife was tortured to death. Torquemada leaned over the body and declared that Maria was innocent. According to the plan, the bodies were supposed to be thrown onto the pile of other corpses, but Torquemada wanted to be more, I'd bury Maria in a stone crypt. Naturally, Torquemada himself could not be blamed for the girl's death. So Esmeralda was accused and brought to the square for execution by fire. The cart stopped next to a barrel of gunpowder, and the woman consumed as much as she could. Esmeralda was chained to a stake. The apparition, "I am a witch, I cursed you all." Esmeralda shouted and asked the frenzied crowd to come closer. She accused Torquemada of the crime. "If I have sinned, let them cut out my tongue," said the Inquisitor, and blood flowed from his mouth. When the flames engulfed the woman, she exploded, and her bones pierced those who stood closest. Meanwhile, Maria stapa pastoieniam boalesil. Maria awoke in her stone coffin, but no one hears her cries. Torquemada leaned over her and confessed his love to the girl. He knows she is innocent. The Inquisitor will now test his latest invention on Pecker, which he called the Pendulum of Hell. A huge blade, swinging from side to side, slowly descends to gradually cut the guy in half. Maria tried for a long time to remove the coffin lid, and, exhausted, mentally asked Antonio for help. Meanwhile, the rats climbed onto the baker and began to gnaw at his hands. One of them was cut in half, and Antonio smeared the rope with blood so that the rats would gnaw through it too. The plan succeeded, and the pendulum only slightly cut his stomach. But then Antonio almost fell into the pit with spikes. Torquemada was distracted by Mendoza, who had eavesdropped on his conversation with Maria. He became disillusioned with the Lord and wanted to free Antonio, but the Inquisitor stabbed him with his dagger. The pit began to close, and Antonio managed to climb out at the last moment, before the sharp teeth cut him. Torquemada rang the bell. No one had ever managed to escape from here. Este mestit oraseke sagier. The guards surrounded Antonio, but he managed them and threw Captain Carlos onto the pendulum. The baker ran into the crypt and with his last strength pushed aside the coffin lid. "Do not touch her. Yokrosaskis bastatiena," growled Torquemada. Suddenly, Maria rose from the dead in front of everyone, and the knights fell to their knees before her. Blood started flowing from the Inquisitor's mouth again. Then he imagined a burnt old woman who threatened him with a terrible death. In the next room, strangled Lady Alba awaited him. The hourglass shattered, and the spilled sand reformed into the remains of Mr. Alfonso. "You must pay for your sins," my wife's voice whispers from everywhere. The guards obeyed her. The frantic Torquemada fell to his knees and begged for forgiveness. The trap opened, and the Grand Inquisitor died, falling onto sharp spikes. Antonio was surprised. How could his wife call for help if her tongue was cut out? Now he can hear Maria without words. The girl released all the prisoners from the cells. The guards blocked their way, but a scribe came out and said that Torquemada had declared Maria innocent. Others can go with her as well.